again, everyone. So I'm doing a follow-up today of my earlier Renaissance paint swatching. So I'll put a link below to that prior swatching video. It's these same colors, so I haven't gotten any new colors. I wanted to do swatch cards for each of these on the channel, but I also wanted to follow up about how they are solidifying in the pans. So I teased this a little bit in the last Daniel Smith swatching video that I did, but these are still, although they are smooth, they're not sticky to the touch because these are honey watercolors. But so their volume has gone down a little bit because some of the water has evaporated, but they are still soft and malleable to the touch. If you can see, so if I press here, it's going to go up on the other side. So I can still put a pretty big dent in there with my clean finger. My guess is that these will probably, and it's about the same for all of them. My guess is that these will probably never fully solidify, but again, this is just a few days out from when I put them in the pans. Yeah, again, they are all about the same. Some have depleted in volume more than others. I would say of the 5, this Chromium Oxide Green is probably the most firm to the touch. It's a very opaque paint, so that could be part of it. And so the deal with the Renesans watercolors is that they are a Polish brand that is not readily available at a lot of different places. I purchased these off of an Etsy shop that is one of the only, if not the only, retailer in the United States that sells them. So I chose a selection that looked good to me from the color samples. Like I said, I've already swatched these on the channel just quickly, but I'm going to do a more thorough swatching so that we can see how they dilute out and see if on the same paper as all the other brands that I have been swatching. Although I think I did do the swatches on Pentalic paper, which is what all of my swatches are in. They're on. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied today. So they are all on Pentalic paper. But I'm not sure if there's a difference between the two different sketchbooks. So I'm going to go ahead and get in here. I am going to put these tubes off to the side. You will notice that I have already filled in the pigment information, which I'll point out as I go through. I have not marked any of these as granulating because there has not been any indication on the tubes as to whether they are granulating. What is nice though is that it contains pretty much all of the other information you would want. It has a little box for opacity, it tells you how staining it is, it gives you the pigment numbers, how light fast it is. It also tells you what the vehicle or the binder is that they're using, which is kind of nice. So this does say gum arabic as their main binder. So I actually wonder how much honey is in here because it might just be sort of an additive later, and I would expect these to be much stickier if they had in the pans, if they had a higher concentration of honey in them. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to zoom in a little bit, and I don't have any but one to compare another brand to. So I do have my Daniel Smith Chromium Green Oxide sample off to the side here to compare to the Renaissance brand, but I don't have the other ones. Actually, I probably have, let's see. So I do have my book that has, you can't see, it's too big, whatever, because I'm totally zoomed in. But anyway, that was my traveler's notebook where I have all of my Daniel Smith samples in. Actually, let me zoom back out and I will show you. And I'll see if I can find the lunar black so that we can compare, because this has the same pigment in it, this Mars black that I have here. I also have Potter's Pink, so we can compare those. I'll get that sample out and put it up there. I don't think I have anything close to this Cadmiumbordeaux, so I'm just going to do this for 3 of them. And I should have, there's the lunar black. And you can see how I can get these samples in and out fairly easily. I actually have mixed up my setup a little bit. I got it back down to 3 3 little card holders per traveler's notebook, and I actually added another narrow traveler's notebook so that I could add more samples to these books. I'll put a link down below to that setup so that you can see how I'm doing that. But anyway, with those 2 samples out, now I can compare those. Oops, sorry. Don't want to compare the light. I want to zoom in. Okay. So let's go ahead and get going. First with this transparent gold ochre. I have some water off to the side here. And this will also show us how well they re-wet when they've dried out a little bit. It seems like it's not really an issue. It seems like you can get pretty good amount of pigment off pretty easily. So this is the transparent gold ochre, and it is PY150 and PR101. And this one is transparent. It is semi-staining and supposedly not granulating. But like I said, there was no indication on any of the tubes as to granulation, so I'm going to wait to indicate that until I kind of have determined for myself. And I might actually do a little Googling first too to see if there is some information out there on the web about specifically which colors are granulating or that they consider granulating. All that information is not necessarily always accurate. I mean, you at some point can just make your own determination. This says it's not granulating, but I'm seeing granulation, so I'm going to call it granulating, for example, because sometimes they're just a little inaccurate. But I was happy to see all of that other information on the side of the tube. Okay, so there we go. That's actually a really pretty color. And now with the diluted bit, it's very, very light over here, but it still has sort of a golden glow. I really kind of like that. Okay, all right, I'll put that to the side and bring it back here at the end. Make sure I don't get those confused for my Daniel Smith samples. Okay, I'm going to put that one off to the side. And then the next one is the Cadmiumbordeaux. And this is opaque, as are most cadmiums, just because it's a very heavy-duty pigment. As you can see, it's a very dark mass tone, even compared to our last one, which was a pretty dark color. Yeah, and I've noticed this happening with some of my samples because I'm using an oil-based stamp for the black ink. It sometimes pulls away from the oil, the black oil of the stamp. It's not necessarily black oil. I don't know why I said that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get that in there. And then I am going to get part of the pigment off, rinse it out a little bit, and then for this last bit, I'm going to completely get the pigment off of my brush and just go in with water for the last bit here. That way we can kind of get a good dilution. So, and that is PR108. That's really pretty. I would probably call that granulating. A lot of cadmiums, if not all of the cadmiums, are granulating, so I would not be surprised. Okay, I'm going to put that aside. I'll make that final determination later. And then here is Potter's Pink, which should be granulating as well, if it's anything like the other Potter's Pink in other brands. And again, these have been re-wetting pretty easily. Ooh, that's a very light Potter's Pink coming out of the pan. If I remember correctly, it was pretty light coming out of directly from the tube as well. So I suppose it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Like I said, I will put a link down to the prior swatching video so that you can compare swatches. This one's just a little bit more precise, and I felt like since this is a new brand to me and probably to many viewers, I wanted to do a little bit more in-depth swatching, even though I didn't have new colors. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if I will get new colors of these. I'm not sure if I like them enough compared to other brands that I have in order to get more. Okay, so like I said, this is Potter's Pink, and it is transparent and non-staining. Oh, and all of these said that they were excellent light fastness. The Renaissance brand seems to go on a scale from 1 to 8, and 8 being the highest light fastness, and they all were rated 8. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Okay, put that up. And then the next one is Mars Black. And this is the color that is PBK 11, so it's similar to Daniel Smith's Lunar Black, but I'm really not seeing as much granulation. I didn't see as much granulation in the prior swatches, and I think it's not as deeply pigmented. But I will do a comparison of this one, the Potter's Pink, and the Chromium Green Oxide here at the end. So with a black, I would expect the mass tone to be pretty much pure black. So let me try to get that as close as I can to that pure black. Okay. And I don't have a lot of black watercolors, mostly because I like to mix my own blacks. And even with mixing a black, I don't generally find the need to mix one that often either, because I just find that I don't necessarily need them that often. But I do like them if you can create special effects like you can with Lunar Black, certainly, and we'll see how this one goes. I can already see, because I'm looking over at the Lunar Black from Daniel Smith, that this seems to be a warmer black than that one. That one seems to be a true black, and I feel like I'm seeing a little bit of brown in here. And again, I would probably call this granulating. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to do this last one, and then we will do our comparisons. So let's go ahead and get into this last color here, Chromium Green Oxide. So again, this does not seem as strong as the Daniel Smith Chromium Green Oxide. I felt like I kind of touched it to the pan with the Daniel Smith brand, and I got a really opaque layer of paint, whereas this one, you have to kind of work at it just a little bit. I mean, in some ways it's kind of unfair to compare different brands of watercolor to Daniel Smith, just because, I mean, Daniel Smith is kind of top of the line, I would say. It might not have the qualities that you want from a watercolor. I mean, they do have a lot of granulating watercolors, for example, and they have a lot of sort of unique to them mixes, but I think as far as concentration of pigment, they really, for me, they tend to be one of the better ones. Okay, yeah, and even when we're diluting out, we're getting a pretty weak, I was going to say weak sauce, but you know what I mean. We're getting a pretty weak sauce here. Okay, so that's that. Let me cover up my water so I don't spill it. And I'm going to bring these colors back out. I think there's enough room here. If not, I will zoom out a little bit. In fact, I probably will zoom out a little bit after I've brought these back into the frame. Okay. Yeah, because they won't even all fit. Okay. Let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit. And majority of these, especially the first three, have dried. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. So this is Daniel Smith's Potter's Pink. Let me move that down. So you can see this is quite a bit lighter than Daniel Smith's Potter's Pink. And maybe this is what you want. You want a pinker Potter's Pink, but it's the same pigment number. Although what's interesting is they're calling theirs semi-transparent and semi-stating, and of course granulating, but I think I'm going to put that on here too. The granulation is definitely not as pronounced as it is here in the Daniel Smith. But they say that theirs is transparent and non-staining, so it's clear that this is, you know, a more muted version of Potter's Pink. So I think the same is probably true of Lunar Black. Now, so what I think is interesting is that Daniel Smith claims that Lunar Black is transparent, which I don't think it is. I think that's probably inaccurate, and semi-staining. And Renesans claims that theirs is semi-transparent and semi-staining, which I tend to agree with, but you can still see that the concentration of the black is way, way higher with Daniel Smith. And you can definitely see, I think you can see, that this is more, you know, black on white, whereas this is a little bit more blended and it has a little bit more warm tone to it. Okay, and let's go to this last one, the Chromium Oxide Green, and all of these are the same pigments. So like this is PBK11, that's PBK11, this is PG17, and this is PG17. I noticed that they call theirs Chromium Oxide Green, and Daniel Smith calls it Chromium Green Oxide. Same difference. They do say that they're both opaque and that they are both semi-staining. Again, there was no indication of granulation, but I would say that this is granulating, as is this. So I'm probably going to go back and put granulating on these four. This one I think is transparent and not granulating, as it would indicate now. So I think we're good. But again, you can see you have a much more strong mix here with the Daniel Smith as opposed to the Renesans. And I think that the tone is similar, but and it's probably just because this is more concentrated. I feel like this is a little bit more yellow in tone than this one, but again, it could just be because the concentration is different. But it's so interesting to see across different brands, the same colors are going to be looking different between different brands. So it's very interesting to me. But anyway, I think that was all I had to share with you today. Like I said, I'm going to put down below all the links to the videos that I referenced here. And but I think that's it for today. So feel free to subscribe so you can keep track of future videos on my channel. And at some point in the future, I am going to be doing some similar color swatch, or the same pigment numbers through different brands. I'm going to compare them to each other with these swatches, because at this point I have quite a few different brands that I have swatched out, and I'm pretty sure that I have some of the same pigment numbers across brands. So that might be kind of interesting for you, and it certainly would be interesting for me, so that I can determine which colors and which brands I prefer. All right, so that's it for today. Seriously, this time. Feel free to subscribe so you can keep track of future videos on my channel, and I hope to see you next time. All right, take care. Bye.